Curious about what's in store for the real estate market in 2025? I'm Lauren. This is Raul with the Schrader Group. And today we are going to break down everything you need to know from market predictions, interest rates, and the hottest neighborhoods and how to make the most of the opportunities ahead. Raul, can you give us an overview of the San Antonio market for 2025 and what trends
Sure. Yeah, so I think a lot about what's going on right now in our industry is we got a new presidency, we got all the elections behind us, we had a lot of people that are just waiting to see what happens. There's probably going to be a similar similarities to 2024, especially in the first and second quarter. I mean, interest rates aren't going to drop immediately. I think it's going to be one of those things that's going to sit around for a little longer. But I think what we did find out is going into the end of the fourth quarter and into the first quarter of 2025 is prices have kind of stabilized a little bit, whether it's on pre-owns or the new home construction. But I think that there's a lot of built up demand, and I think a lot of people are ready to figure out what can I do and when can I actually make that move.
So what can buyers and sellers expect as far in terms of home prices?
Yeah, so I think right now the average when we ended up in fourth quarter of 2024, we were at about 371, which is kind of getting back to the normals. We were a lot higher, but now that things have kind of contracted a little bit, we're starting to see that the means is coming a little bit tighter, which is kind of good, right? Because now we're getting into that market where it makes a little bit more sense. We started out the end of November at almost 14,000 homes and change. We ended the year at around 13,400 or 500. Today, currently in middle way through January, we're close to 13,000, which means that a lot of inventories come off the market, whether that's new year, new me mantra, or it's just the fact that people are tired of waiting.
Yeah. Are there any areas in San Antonio that you think will see significant growth in 2025?
Yeah, I think, all the forecasts are yielding towards all the heat maps in San Antonio where all the new permits are being offered or actually getting pulled. The Northwest side is still a big staple for our community. A lot of things are growing out towards that Castroville area, 211 area. The South side's continuing to grow.
South side blowing up.
It is. It really is because, I mean, the affordability factor is real key right now to try to get that numbers to where people could get, and purchase a home. We're starting to see some more growth going towards Seguin area. So anywhere from the corridor of, Converse going out, and of course, New Braunfels is still doing really, really well. Anything north of 1604 going like 281 north, it still has growth, but it's not as large as those other areas because there's just a lot more builders that are building and developing land out there.
So if I were a home buyer this year in 2025, and I was say, what is the best piece of advice you could give me? What would that be?
Decide what you want to be or where you want your household to be in 2026 and 27, because it could be a matter of location. Do we want to get something? Yeah, because the reason I say that is there's a lot of inventory on the ground, which gives the buyer the upper hand in making a conscious decision or educated decision on where they want to live. So sometimes it might be that short term of, hey, I might have to pay a little bit higher on interest rate, but to get to where my kids go to school within 5 minutes, where we shop, where we hang out, because I think a lot of that is key. Some of the downfalls of developing areas are that these things are being built, but they're just not there yet, but they will be there, right? So if you want to take a look at that, figure out what your household wants to look like in the end of 25, 26, and 27. But outside of that, take advantage of all the new incentive houses out there, tons of incentive buy downs. I mean, there's just a lot of tools that buyers have right now that they didn't have a couple of years ago. So I think take as much money as you can and you and the fam.
So what about if I were to sell my home? What would be the best piece of advice you could give me for this year?
Yeah, so best piece of advice is you've been on the sidelines, right? And you've been watching the market. You saw your neighbors sell in 2021 for probably 10, 15% higher than where it's at right now. I think the real idea is to look at what's going to sell and price your home accordingly to what's going to be like a 30 to 60 day transaction. Why? You're going to have the best visibility. You're probably going to get the best offer without getting hit on incentives and all the other things that might come with it for concessions or whatnot. So be realistic. Do the little things. Now more than ever, you're going to have to get in there and have the paint touch-ups done, have the yard looking right. You just want to create that best vibe for when you do have one buyer coming in, because showings are a little bit lighter because there's so many options for them right now for buyers, that you make a really good lasting impression. Keep the house tidy, dishes out of the sink, the bed's made. All those kind of things play a big role right now, because if we could get them in longer than 5-6 minutes, they're interested. Anything less than that, it's normally a sign that they're not interested in the house.
And that is why they need to hire an experienced realtor.
Absolutely, because what we're going to do is we're going to go in with the lens of a buyer and an inspector. So I'm going to point out some things that might get you to move that needle a little bit more. Because if someone walks in your house and they say, "Oh, look, there's paint, there's scuffs on the wall," one thing. "Oh, look, there's stains on the carpet," that's another thing. They stop looking at the functionality of the house, and now they're really looking at how much is this going to cost me to get it to my standards or my liking. So we want to take away as many as possible to where they're trying to plan where are we going to have our birthday parties? Where are we going to hang the piñata in the backyard? Where are we going to put the Christmas tree? Because that's when you start to create that sense of this buyer is really interested in your home. And they've looked around and they've been able to say, hey, I could see myself and my team or my family or my household living here. And that's what we really want to create.
Yes, that's great advice. So I know that you've been to a couple housing forecasts talking about predictions for the end of the year. What do you see? Or what advice can you tell us for the end of the year?
Yeah, well, the world's going to continue to turn. We have employment at about 3.9%. So if you're looking for a job, you could probably find a job. You're not struggling in that gap. The median income for San Antonio is about $80,000 per household, which is pretty good. I mean, it's not as good as we would like it to be, but it's better than where it was 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. So we're starting to see that come into play. Interest rates are going to be interest rates, and I think that people are going to wait for them to fall. They're going to be waiting a little bit longer. I think a lot of people waited into the end of 24, end of 23, and just trying to hope. But what we're finding is the waiting factor or the cost of waiting is starting to play an issue in the market because now people are starting to jump out there and take advantage of these deals. And you don't want to get in a position where now inventories have shrunken a little bit to where now you're competing. You put in an offer, I put in an offer. Which offer is better, right? We don't want to be in that ballpark. So you're able to get in without that stigma of, hey, I got to outdo somebody else. So I think that's going to be a key factor going into 2025. But ultimately, there's going to be about 17,000 new starts, which means that's going to be 17 new slabs that are going to go in, 17,000 new slabs that are going to go up here in San Antonio, which means the growth is here. They think that we're going to come out probably about the same as 2024, first quarter, second quarter. But I think by that point, all the pent-up demand, everyone that's been waiting, the people that said, hey, we'll wait one more year before we sell. We'll wait 2 more years before we sell. That's kind of fizzing out. The whole idea of I don't want to give up my 3% interest rate because, you know, it's a great rate, which it probably is, right? It's probably not going to get that good. But did you not have this extra kid in the family now because a newborn was born? Or now you took in your relatives because of whatever it might be. So maybe we have to upsize or downsize. That limitation's kind of going away. So we got to kind of look at what's going to be right for the household and get them kind of thinking in that way of, hey, now might not be the most opportune time to get the best interest rate, but we could refinance it later. And there's great programs that allow you to refinance for a reduction in cost to allow you to, you know, absorb the house now and then kind of get to where you want to be later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing I've learned is the housing market is so unpredictable. So just, yeah, you don't want to keep waiting and waiting because you just never know.
Yeah, and if you look at Texas as a whole, I mean, we are doing really, really well with affordability. We're doing really, really well with the number of starts. We just surpassed Austin, which we've been trailing them for a while. So we just took over that position. But that has a lot to do with our metro and how much we're growing, how diverse we are. We still have a lot of housing that we could get into around 250 to 300,000, where there's a lot of parts of the country that can't even scratch the surface of that. And that's new construction. So that's really important. But, you know, we ended the fourth quarter at a 371 overall price point. So that's still kind of affordable when we look at it with respects to the rest of the nation. Days on market right now is about 73 for the end of the fourth quarter. And if we look at it, that's kind of come down a little bit in retrospect to the past years. So we're really excited about that. But all that's telling me is more people are starting to get that itch. We've had so many inquiries of what's my house worth now because I'm thinking about selling. I want to be ready because if I push the gas, I don't want to lose any time. I don't want it to, you know, take 3 weeks to get the house prepped. They're trying to get ahead of the curve, which means that they're expecting spring to be a really, really good time to hit the market and go purchase something of their own.
Yeah. Where do you see some of the biggest opportunities for 2025?
Yeah, so I mean, when we look at it as a whole, it's definitely a buyer's market, right? So I think there's a huge advantage to be a buyer right now, and everyone's trying to appease the buyer. So what they're doing is on the seller side, whether it's pre-owned or new construction, we're starting to see that the average on concessions on the pre-owned side is anywhere between 2 to 3%. So on a $300,000 home, the sellers negotiating or willing to give anywhere between 6 to 9 grand. Okay, so let's flip the coin to new construction. They can cap out at closer to 6% on some of their deals. They're reducing the prices. It could be a $550,000 house, and now they reduce it to a $475,000. I mean, there's a lot of deals out in the market, not to mention they're willing to buy down your rate, and you don't have to go negotiate some of this stuff. Those are the current incentives that they have out there.
Crazy.
It could be a 499 this month. Next month, it might be a 5.49. Maybe it's a 2-1 buy down. I mean, there's just a lot of creativity in the market. Why? They're incentivizing our buyers to buy, right? So they're going to do whatever they can. I mean, you've got move-in packages, washer, dryer, refrigerator, blind packages, the rate buy down, which makes affordability a little bit easier. And then they're helping with the concessions. So I think that right now, if you're looking as a buyer, the lens hasn't been clear in the fact that now is probably the time to buy before everyone jumps in, because when everyone else jumps in, what's going to happen? They're going to start to pull the concessions back. They're going to start to pull on both sides, the sellers on the pre-existing market and also on the new construction. So I think with all that put together, biggest opportunities right now is to have somebody that's knowledgeable in the industry and also be able to advocate for you guys as far as what your goals are. Is it a monthly payment? Is it a price point? Or is it, I don't want to have to come out of pocket for X, Y, or Z? Now's the time to actually negotiate that and get the biggest bang for your buck.
Thank you so much for watching. Please reach out if you have any questions or are thinking about buying or selling in 2025, and subscribe to our channel.
We're super optimistic about this year. I think the first 2 quarters are going to be a little bit like we were in 2024. But I think the second half of the year is going to be really, really great. I think we see a little bit of reduction in interest and I think that there's going to be a great deal of deals to be had. So if you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out. If not, y'all have a blessed day and we'll talk to you soon.